The first thing I heard behind the waterfall was not fear, but restraint, the kind that trembles because it refuses to scream. And when the Apache woman whispered, "Cowboy, don't look, my dress is gone," the words cut sharper than any bullet I'd ever fired, because they weren't spoken to seduce or shame, but to survive. And that was the moment I understood that whatever waited beyond that curtain of falling water was not a simple accident of the frontier, but the beginning of a reckoning written long before I rode into Red Gorge Canyon with blood on my boots and ghosts on my back. I'd come west chasing silence, or maybe running from it, after the war stripped me of everything that made sense, leaving only the sound of gunfire echoing in my head even when the plains were quiet. And when my horse threw a shoe near the canyon's edge, I followed the sound of water without knowing it would lead me into something alive. Watching, wounded and proud, the waterfall roared like it wanted to drown the world, and I dismounted, leading my horse by the reins. When I heard the voice, soft, cracked, deliberate, speaking English the way someone speaks a borrowed language. Careful not to break it, I froze, my hand still on the colt at my hip, instinct screaming danger, but something else, something older, held me still. "I won't look," I said, staring at the rock wall to my left, heart pounding like hooves in a stampede, because a man can tell the difference between a trap and a plea. And that voice carried no ambush. Water mist clung to the air, soaking my hat brim, and behind me the canyon felt suddenly narrow, as if the land itself leaned in to listen. She didn't move at first, and in that silence I imagined 1,000 stories the West had taught me. Raids, kidnappings, lies told in campfire light, but none of them fit the trembling breath I heard as she shifted behind the falling water. "They took it," she said finally, and I didn't need to ask who, because only one kind of man leaves a woman hiding naked behind stone and spray, and they wear many flags but share the same soul. I stayed, turned away, and unbuckled my coat, sliding it along the rock so she could reach it without stepping into view, feeling strangely exposed myself despite the gun at my side. When her fingers brushed the leather sleeve, they hesitated, and that hesitation told me more than words. This was a woman who trusted no one left alive. And the fact she reached for that coat at all meant the world had already broken her rules. "My name is Eliza Crow," I said, "because names matter when everything else is stolen." And I heard her repeat it softly, as if testing whether it would betray her if she held it too tight. She didn't give me hers then, only said she was Apache, and even that was spoken like a challenge, as if daring the canyon to judge her. I kept my eyes on the rock, but my mind painted pictures anyway. Dark hair, slick with mist, skin marked by travel and survival, eyes sharp enough to cut. A rope. And when she stepped out from behind the waterfall wrapped in my coat, I still didn't turn, because dignity in the West was a rare thing, and once lost it never found its way back. "They're close," she said, voice steady now. And that was when the fear sharpened into something useful. I asked how many, and she answered without pause, 3 men, white, armed, laughing when they should have been running, men who thought the frontier made them gods. The canyon suddenly felt like a throat, and we were standing inside it. I whistled low, calming my horse, and told her we'd move upstream, where the rock narrowed and the water masked tracks. And she followed without question, bare feet silent on stone, moving like someone born to land that didn't forgive mistakes. As we climbed, she told me they'd attacked her camp at dawn, taken what they wanted, killed what resisted, and chased her laughing when she ran, because cruelty loves an audience. I didn't speak because rage needs no encouragement. And when we reached a ledge above the falls, I finally turned just enough to see her reflection in the water, a woman standing straight despite everything taken, eyes dark with fire, my coat hanging heavy on her shoulders like borrowed armor. "Why help me?" she asked, and the question landed harder than any accusation, because I didn't know the answer yet. Maybe it was because I was tired of being a man who survived when better ones didn't. Or maybe because the West doesn't give you many chances to choose who you are. And when it does, it demands payment in blood. I told her the truth, or as close as I could manage, because some lines shouldn't be crossed. Even out here, the sound of voices echoed below us then. Drunk, careless, confident, and her hand clenched at her side. Not in fear but fury, and when she finally gave me her name, it was like a vow spoken to the stone itself. "Nayeli," she said, and the canyon seemed to remember it. I checked my revolver, felt the familiar weight settle into my palm, and for the first time in a long while, the ghosts behind my eyes went quiet, as if they too were watching what came next. The men's laughter rose with the spray, unaware that the land they thought they owned had already chosen sides. And as I signaled Nayeli to stay back, I realized this wasn't about rescue or revenge alone. It was about witness, about standing where history tried to look away. And when the first shadow moved beneath the falls, I knew the West was about to remember a story it tried to bury, written not in ink, but in water, stone, and the unbreakable will of a woman who refused to disappear. The canyon did not feel empty once the men's voices drifted closer. It felt crowded with things unseen, with old memories embedded in stone and water, and as Nayeli pressed herself into the shadow behind the ledge, I could sense the land tightening around us like a fist preparing to strike. She did not tremble, not even when the laughter below sharpened into taunts that scraped against the rock, but her jaw set in a way that told me fear had already done its worst and been dismissed. I motioned for her to stay low, and she nodded once, the movement small but absolute, trusting silence more than reassurance. The mist from the waterfall coated my revolver, cold and slick, and for a moment I remembered another river, another ambush, another time I had hesitated and paid for it with lives I could never name out loud. The West had taught me that hesitation was a luxury, but this moment demanded more than speed. It demanded intent. The men below argued now, their words bouncing off the canyon walls, one claiming she couldn't have gone far, another complaining about the cold water soaking his boots, and the third laughing too loudly, the way men do when they sense the edge of something they don't understand. Nayeli leaned closer, her breath warm against my sleeve, and whispered that the canyon curved sharply ahead, narrowing into a choke point where sound carried but sight did not, a place her people avoided unless they wanted to disappear. I understood then that this was not just terrain to her. It was memory, strategy, inheritance. We moved inch by inch along the rock face, every step measured, my heart beating slow and deliberate, as if it had finally found a rhythm that made sense. A hawk cried overhead, sharp and lonely, and one of the men cursed it, spitting into the water. Unaware he was cursing the very sky that watched him. I felt the weight of choice pressing down, heavier than the gun at my side. Because killing in defense is never clean, and saving one life often means ending another. A truth the frontier never bothers to soften. Nayeli paused near a narrow crevice and reached out, steadying herself against the stone. And I noticed then the marks on her arms, scratches, bruises, signs of flight and fight etched into skin like a map of survival. She caught me looking and did not flinch, her eyes meeting mine with a quiet defiance that asked for neither pity nor permission. In that look, I saw why she had survived when others hadn't, and why the men below would never understand what they were hunting. The voices grew louder, closer, and I could hear the scrape of metal as one unslung his rifle. The careless confidence of someone who believed the world owed him obedience. Time stretched thin, each second pulled tight as wire, and I realized that whatever happened next would bind us, if only briefly, into a story neither of us had planned, but both would carry. I adjusted my stance, aligning breath with intent, while Nayeli melted back into shadow, becoming part of the canyon itself. And as the first figure stepped into the open pool below the falls, grinning at his own bravado, I felt the West lean forward, waiting to see who would speak first, mercy or consequence.